Mission.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for watching my videos. I'm very, very grateful that you do. Listen, well, first of all, let me tell you, we're not a prisoner of YouTube anymore, so you can find us on all of these different platforms. I almost forgot to tell you that. I get a lot of requests for videos for folks who don't have a lot of dough. And I get it. I mean, you know, a lot of times when you're doing videos of very expensive items. And I've had people say, well, gee, I can't afford that. What could I get? Well, just so that you know, I've had my, what they used to call the Franks and Beans days, when all you had was hot dogs and beans, and that was about it. And I've been so broke, I couldn't afford to pay attention. So during those times, younger times, that I just had to, if I could scrape together $50, it was amazing. A lot of folks are still in that kind of condition today. Many folks are, and they would like to have a gun for home defense, but they can't afford to plunk down $400 or $500 or $600 on a gun, or even $200 or $300 in some cases. And sometimes that's the difference between making the rent or putting food on the table or not. And it takes a long time to save up a little bit of money. You know what? I get it. And if that's the position you're in, I want to point out to you what I discovered when I was dirt broke, living with a roommate in a very, very bad part of town. In fact, where we were living, I'm not joking when I say that what rocked us to sleep every night was the sound of the sirens, the yelling and fighting, and the gunshots. That's how bad the neighborhood was. And we were concerned because we didn't have a way to defend ourselves. Between the two of us, we were just poor as church mice, and so we had to kind of save a little money, and we ended up buying a little double-barrel shotgun. Not terribly dissimilar from these two that I have sitting here. Now, I brought this up because these are not what you would call fine shotguns. There's no Brownings in here. There's no Safe Queens in here. You're not going to find a Caesar Guarini sitting here or a Perazzi or anything like that. These are cheapy shotguns, and generally these kind of guns were what you would call department store guns, I guess. Sears sold a lot of them. You could get them at Montgomery Wards, what my grandparents used to call monkey wards, and you could, back when the department stores still sold guns, these were guns that were made by other companies that were sold through department stores. This one, for example, is a Ranger 12 gauge, and Ranger was a name that Sears used to sell this shotgun and other shotguns like them. This is a Ranger. They were sold by Sears in, quite a lot, actually. They're not a stellar shotgun in the sense that the triggers are pretty hard and, they're heavy and they're not balanced terribly well. But, when you're broke and you want something to defend yourself, I got to tell you, don't look away from the old double-barrel shotgun, because if you've ever looked down the barrels of a double-barrel 12 gauge, or any gauge for that matter, that's there's some pucker factor associated with that. That's quite an impressive thing to be looking at. And I've actually stuffed one in a couple of people's faces in my life when I lived in bad parts of town. And you got instant compliance because they were afraid that you might touch one of those two triggers and that would be the end of them. I'll tell you something, I've looked up some statistics in the past, and the majority of people shot with handguns survive. I don't know if you knew that or not, but the majority of people shot with 12 gauge buckshot don't. In fact, I would say the survivability percentage of people hit squarely with buckshot in a home defense situation, or any situation for that matter, law enforcement or whatever, is probably close to statistically zero. So if you've got something like this and it functions really well and it's in good shape, it might be a decent choice for you. And here's why I say that. Yeah, you only got 2 shots, but you know what? If you're broke, 2 shots of 12 gauge is actually probably more effective than 5 or 10 shots of 9mm or 38 Special, for example, because as I said, handguns are underpowered as defensive arms, and you're not going to carry it around. It's a home defense gun. You might not want to look past the idea of a double barrel shotgun, because some of these can be had for $50 or $100. You look around, you can find them in pretty good working condition for $100, which is, sometimes for some folks it's hard to save $100, but it's a lot easier than trying to save $500 or $600 or $800 or something to get something that would be better. So I want to tell you, I just say it to you right now, if you're in that position, don't get all tied up with all the YouTube videos you see saying you can only defend yourself with a high-end AR or some sort of, or the Nighthawk Custom 45 or whatever. Look, you know what? If you got to defend yourself, a shotgun works really well. Here's another one. This was also sold by Sears, and this one Both of these, I think, are probably Stevens shotguns. You never know. This is an Eastern Arms shotgun. It was a name that Sears used and sold them. And you can see that somebody's put a funky pad on it because it didn't have one. If you take it off, there's no shotgun pad. So they just found this one, and it fit, so they jammed it on there. I did take these out and knock some clays down with them, frankly. Are the triggers really hard? Yeah, some of them, the triggers are stiff, and it's not the most comfortable. It doesn't swing that well. It's not that well balanced. You know, it's a little off and so on. So it's not what, like I said, it's not a fine double. But if you're not out killing clays with it or hunting birds with it or whatever, what's the difference? You're pointing it at the door, the bedroom door, while you got the cops on the phone. And if the person comes through the door and doesn't have a badge on it, isn't somebody that belongs there, has a weapon, or looks like a threat, you got 2 chances to win here. And they're pretty darn big chances at that. So you might look at some of these. This gun, I would say, if you were to go shop around and find this Eastern Arms 12 gauge in the kind of shape that this one is in, which is very functional. It's not in like new shape, but you can see it locks up nice and tight. And I took it out to the range and fired it and found that it really functions beautifully. It's got some pitting on the barrel on the outside from rust, but the insides of the barrels on both of these guns are just beautiful and clean and shiny as shiny could be. Now, the one thing about doubles, when you start looking at really old doubles, you got to be careful of is Damascus barrels. So I'm not going to get too deep into that right here, but you might want to look up Damascus barrels and just do a little research on how to tell whether it's a Damascus barrel or not. In both these cases, they're not. They're actually proven steel barrels and able to take regular ammunition. Now, here's another option. If you don't want to have just 2 shots, you can get yourself a lever action or bolt action shotgun. I'm not a big fan of either one, and I'll tell you why, but nevertheless, they are available. I think this one holds 3 or 4 shots, and this is a Kessler Arms shotgun. They didn't make them very long. They're kind of clunky and weird. They made them for, I think, a couple of years in the early 50s, maybe 51 to 53, and then they went belly up because they weren't terribly popular. They made 2 models that I'm aware of. One is this one, which is a bolt action model, and the other was a lever action model, similar to what you might see in a lever action rifle. And they were made in just about all the standard gauges, I think, 410 and 20 gauge and 12 gauge and 16. This is a 16, and they functioned pretty well. Now, this one, I took to the range and it didn't want to cycle very well. I could see that it had it was just dirty. I think if I cleaned it up really well and put some ammunition in it, then it would cycle better than it does. Like I said, they're a little clunky. It's a little hard if you're shooting birds with them because you've got this big knob in the back, so it's hard to focus on the bird and hit the bird. So they're harder to shoot from the standpoint of hunting birds, but you can hunt rabbits with it or whatever. You certainly could shoot birds with it if you practiced a little bit. But for home defense, you got 2 shots if you got a double. You got 3, 4 shots if you got these little repeaters like this. And again, this gun is probably worth anywhere from, I'd guess anywhere from $35 to $70, somewhere in there. And it's totally functional, works brilliantly. As I said, it a little tough cycling, but it probably just needs to be cleaned. And if you clean it up, then you've got a good handy little home defense gun, a little shotgun, just like that. So if you added up the value of these 3 guns right here, you probably got $300 or less. And there you are. And now you've got something you can defend your family with and defend your home with. So if you're in that position where money's tight and there just isn't a lot of dough to go around and you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet and you got more month than money, you know what? I get it. I've been there. I've been there many, many times. And it's tough. And at the same time, if you're in a rotten neighborhood, which, some people will say, well, you're in a rotten neighborhood, just move. Well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense because the people that live in bad neighborhoods a lot of times aren't making a lot of money. They'd love to move, but they don't have the money to do it. And if you don't have the money to do it, you can't get out of the neighborhood. So sometimes you got to find yourself, pick these up at a pawn shop, or sometimes you'll find them on a gun store rack and you'll get them for pennies, really, comparatively to other types of shotguns that would do the same job. So I did this video primarily not because I knew it wasn't going to wow anybody, but because I've gotten so many questions about what can be done on a really tight budget. Well, on a really tight budget, a double barrel shotgun, one of these old department store shotguns, which is the word I couldn't come up with earlier, or one of these old bolt guns or lever guns or something, if that's what you prefer, might just be the ticket. So it's something to consider. You can get online and look for them. The Ranger you'll find people talking about. Certainly you'll find people talking about the various different models here, and there are many others. And if you just look for old department store shotguns, a lot of them were sold by Sears, you'll find them for sale in the $50 to $150 range, and might actually get the job done for you. Anyway, there it is. Didn't have a lot to talk about today. I just wanted to bring this to your attention in case you're in that situation. Hopefully that helps. Thank you very much for watching and for all of your support here at GunGuyTV. I'm very, very grateful that you support us like you do. Please keep on watching. Have a great week, and please stay safe.